Hello, my name is Aaron Chever, and I'm going to be talking about Chapter 2 or Module 2 over Historical and Ethical Foundations. I found the whole chapter to be very insightful and very interesting, and a lot of things that I didn't know about. But for this presentation specifically, we're going to be focusing on ethical foundations. Immanuel Kant's deontological theory really stood out to me and kind of made sense to me, and I related to it very well. The theory focuses heavily on the moral act and moral duty of persuasion rather than the outcome and actions. So I consider myself to be an honest person. I was raised to make wise choices that were ethically and morally right. I'd be lying if I said that that was the case for every situation growing up, but I do think that I do really put a lot of thought and care into situations, probably more than I should. That's also why this theory related so much to me. So whenever I was put in the situation that I'm about to talk about, I kind of knew what I had to do. So I work as a server, and as a server, it's really enforced that we upsell items and sell our highest price plates. It not only affects the restaurant, but it affects me. When I upsell these items, it makes the tab go higher, and it also affects my tip. The higher the tab, more likely I'm gonna get a tip. There was complaints that they were too salty and that they didn't taste good. So I had this couple walk in. This couple walked in and they were an older couple, and I got to know them. As a server, you kind of just talk to your tables, and they informed me that they don't go out to eat very often. They actually only eat out once a month. They're on really strict diets and have to watch their salt intake. So I let them gather over the menu, and when they came back, they had questions. The woman asked me about the fish plates. She was really interested in the higher price fish plate, and she said that she was willing to splurge because she doesn't go out to eat very often, and she asked me my opinion on it. So at this point, I knew that it had already been sent back quite often, and I remembered her saying that she had to watch her salt intake. So I could have either said, I really suggest it, I think you would really like it, and I think that it would be worth it since you don't get to go out to eat very often. But I took into consideration the fact that she didn't go out to eat often, and that this one purchase could have been a horrible purchase for her. So I told her the truth, that the fish plates are really good normally. But today we were getting complaints about how they were really salty, and I noticed that she had, and I remember her talking about her salt intake. She really respected the fact that I told her the truth, and that she said that her health really depends on the salt intake, so that I saved her life. She said that her body is affected by salt really heavily. She said thank you and that she respected my honesty. So I do think that the situation played really well, or the theory played really well in that. I always think about the famous quote, do for others as you would want others to do for you. I would put myself in someone else's shoes, and I would have definitely wanted the truth if I was in that situation, especially if it involves my health. I think that being morally honest and correct is better than anything else. Me personally, I do know that it's different by situation. So now that I've discussed the experience, I want to talk about some inferences. I believe that I had compassion and kind of just put myself as a human and understanding that she could have made a really bad decision that day, or I could have made a bad decision by letting her do something that she could not do. I would have really felt guilty by convincing her for my selfish reasons of getting a higher tip and getting noticed by management for her eating something that she could not be eating. Now that I've made some inferences, let's discuss how these inferences can be transferred to other situations. This theory can be used in a lot of situations and a lot of different kind of everyday choices, but I think that it can be used mostly in career field choices. Like, let's say if I was a realtor. If I was a realtor, I make majority of my money off of commission. So I'm selling people houses, I get a commission. Obviously, that's your goal. That's how you make a living. That's your end goal. You're focusing on the outcome, which is quite opposite of what the theory says. So if I had a client and they were asking about a house, and I knew that they couldn't afford it, and I knew that it would be a struggle with them or for them, I would feel really guilty for persuading them to buying that house, even though it is my job. But I would be morally invested and I would feel really bad. So I would tell them probably out of their price range, and I would suggest another house, which can benefit both of us. In conclusion, with the information gathered in the text, I use it as an insight to see how one's morals and persuasion really do matter. So you're probably thinking, so what? I suggest that you look at persuasion not as a purely outcome-based message, but a morally correct message and understanding. I do think that the deontological theory is a very strong theory. I think that it can be played into a lot of different situations in a lot of different everyday life. This theory does suggest that this is kind of the only way that you should follow, which is the morally correct way. I do relate a lot to it because that's the way I was raised, but I do realize that every situation is different. I found a few words that kind of go with this perfectly, and it says, do right and do your best, which I think makes perfect sense. So thank you all so much.